Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Tonight we are continuing our book study on The Circuit of Force by Dion Fortune, with notes and commentary by Gareth Knight. Now, we left off a little bit in the middle of the chapter called Animal Magnetism and Etheric Phenomena. And what we're going to do is pick up where we left off and continue. So, peace and greetings to everyone here. And hopefully you are having a wonderful day. Peace, peace. So let's see. If I'm not mistaken, we kind of left off right at levitation. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's what it should be. Right at levitation. So let me check something here real quick. Levitation, apports, and precipitation. All right, so we'll finish up this commentary C, and then we're going to read the chapter called Dangers of Faulty Development. Dangers of Faulty Development. All right, that sounds good. That sounds about right. All right, so let's get to it. Leah Farrell, peace and greetings. So wonderful to meet you today. So wonderful to meet you today. Beautiful soul. And I'm glad that we got a chance to connect. Looking forward to hearing from you again. Emperor Rex, LVX777. Peace and greetings, my friend. Monica Lawan, greetings. Good evening to you. Welcome. Zero the hero in the building, my friend, in the building. Peace and much love to you as well. I am that I am. Peace, peace. Welcome, my friend. Janae Owo. Welcome back. Good to see you. My Gnosis. Peace. My brother in darkness. Absolutely. Big forehead gods unite. Cosmic P. Peace, my friend. Mathra. Welcome. Good to see you as well. Eric Barron. Peace and welcome. I saw you one time and you ain't stopped showing up. Keep it up, my friend. Good to see you. Trikage, welcome, my friend. Peace. Cosmic Puzzle Piece. Good evening, my friend. Good evening. LF1803. Welcome. So let's get this thing going, right? Levitation. Let me run it back just a little bit so we can kind of get back into the flow of where we were. Leah says I have a big forehead as well. Nah, not to the degree of me and my Gnosis. Not to the degree of me and my Gnosis. maybe a medium. We got a large. So let me run it back just a little bit. In the case of a serious group that is well developed through practice, together, Phoebe Payne reports seeing the buildup of a kind of rod or cantilever in etheric matter drawn from all present that stretches from the foot or the leg of the medium under the table to assist in tilting. So they were talking about tilting with this table. This is very much like the kind of device that in physical terms would be considered fraudulent practice. In a more run-of-the-mill groups, however, any table movement, oh, I see, so it was kind of fake. No? Well, etheric matter. This is very much the kind of device that in physical terms, there we go, would be considered fraudulent practice. In more run-of-the-mill groups, however, any table movement is the consequence of automatic muscular movements from the sitters, activated through their subjective minds. And that's valid too, because this happens a lot in hypnosis. Eric Barron says your microphone has a high gain. It does. You're absolutely right. Because in watching some of my previous streams, my mic was very low. Apparently, it's kind of sensitive at this point. Let me see if I can turn it down just a tad. All right. How's that? That should have eliminated some of the clipping. Let me know. Let me know if that eliminates some of the clipping. Wash your hands. All right. Get your fork. Make sure you read the instructions and put it in the microwave. You gotta heat it up and you gotta stir it. All right. All right. I'm a digital audio engineer. I catch those things. Yes, sir. Right there with you. I ain't been in the field in a few years, but I understand. All right, so we're good to go. Let's see. DIY macaroni. Oh, we got the Salisbury steak meal because I can't cook right now. It's just to hold them over until we finish. So we were having lunch, right? Which was kind of like breakfast, because if he stays here with me, he's gonna have to stay up late and wake up early. Well, anyways, we had bacon and eggs with some chicken nuggets, and I saw him wrapping his chicken nuggets in bacon, and I was like, oh shit, let me try that. And I wrapped mine, and I was like, this is kind of like cordon bleu. So we got to talk, and I was like, you know what? How about we do a homemade Magus style cordon bleu? So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. But that ain't going to be till midnight. So in the meantime, we need some microwave business. All right. At a more advanced level, there are various types of manifestation, which might be listed as levitation, apports, precipitation, slate writing, spirit photography, and direct voice phenomena. In Phoebe Payne's view, which includes clairvoyant perception, these invariably require the involvement of skilled and powerful inner helpers of one kind or another working upon the etheric levels. Can you imagine raising your vibration to the point where you're able to meet friends on the etheric plane? And, some of you kind of already have relationships like that, intelligences on the spiritual plane that have assisted you through life in one way or another. And there are some people who have not had that experience. But when we say friends in higher places, when the Bible talks about powers and principalities in high places, and what he mentioned here was powerful inner helpers of one kind or another working upon the etheric levels, it's a very real thing. And it doesn't always come through as like you seeing shapes of people talking to you doing things. It's not always that clear. Sometimes you just have a knowing that there is a consistent force that's by your side. Christians might straight up say that that's God, or that was Jesus, or that was angels. But it's a very real and common thing to have assistance on the etheric levels. Like I said, some of y'all know what I'm talking about, and some people may not. But that kind of thing ain't as far-fetched as it might sound. So let's talk about levitation. Levitation of the medium is nowadays considered a rarity, although the raising of light objects is fairly common. You might have seen people on TikTok and shit practicing this. I know that my cousin has been practicing that for years, and I mean, I have seen it. I remember one. I think probably the most vivid one was he fucking flung the damn cat bowl upside down, and we weren't even in that area. But anyways, I believe that telekinesis and that type of thing can be trained. If you all remember cyclomancy, some of you have studied cyclomancy, some of you have not. But these types of abilities are most definitely possible. Anyways, levitation of the medium is nowadays considered a rarity, although the raising of light objects is fairly common. Phoebe Payne reports having had several opportunities to observe such phenomena and found it most readily explainable by the formulation of ectoplasmic hands or other lifting devices, plus possibly an ability to vary the air pressure around a physical object. Have any of you had experience of sometimes when you would notice if you enter a room, sometimes the lights would flicker? Or maybe any number of things have happened. Has anybody here ever had an experience like that? Have you ever had an experience where you would be very emotional, maybe crying, and the storm would begin to surge outside, or at least a rain, and it would kind of stop around the same time that you stopped crying? Maybe, maybe not. It's not, like I said, this isn't everybody, but I have certainly met people that have this kind of connection, and I've seen it with my own eyes enough to know that this isn't just something on TV, on a movie, or in the book. Yeah. Yeah. So some of y'all have certainly experienced that, as I thought. What I've also seen is that when you have certain experiences like that, especially when you're younger and you have no one to really explain what's going on, it starts to become the fuel for your spiritual journey and your spiritual research, because you want to understand what was going on. Eric Barron says that's called pure empathy. That's an indicator that we are all connected through the unified field. True indeed. True indeed. Janelle says yes. LF says yep. Right, right. So we've all had experiences like that. So it's most certainly a realistic thing. And I'm saying it's also connected to a level of influence on the etheric plane. That's not a physical thing at all. Not a physical thing at all. Zero says twice. The first, I was crying really, really hard at the streets, and the city started to rain hard. And the other time at the park, I was in front of a lake and started meditating with a Dead Mouse song. Yeah. Mothar says teenage poltergeists. Teenagers going through hormones create paranormal activity. I just saw a book on this. Yeah, right, right. And you can imagine if nobody around you has any type of explanation for that. If you're looking for an answer and somebody gives you some bullshit, right? Maybe somebody older or some type of church member, you could start to develop fears around that type of thing. Zero says I was meditating in front of a lake with the Dead Mouse song about Cthulhu, and imagine a being like that rising from the lake, and the whole weather started to change. And training with even ice. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Joy Empress says, the most I know from me is clairvoyance and clairsentience so far. Oh, and channeling sometimes. Yeah, and I would say that channeling is a form of clairvoyance and clairaudience. And that's usually where I have a lot of my strength, is through channeling like that. Yeah. The Pharaoh says yes. Right, right. Apports. So this is the bringing of objects from a distance, and is a different phenomenon from levitation and a more complex one. It involves the passage of matter through matter, and this can only be achieved by the dematerialization of an object and its subsequent rematerialization elsewhere. In terms of esoteric technicalities, this involves dispersing the physical atoms by thought power whilst retaining its etheric counterpart by an act of will on the part of the operator. This is obviously no easy matter, despite being almost a commonplace with Madame Blavatsky in her days in India, although the fuss and bother in which it later involved her caused her to wish she had never bothered with this kind of manifestation. It is not as rare as all that, however, and in an emergency, a close friend of Phoebe Payne had a key apported to her from a drawer at home. Imagine that. And hell, maybe that might unlock something for some of y'all. Apports. So maybe if you haven't heard of that, is pretty much teleporting objects. Eric Barron says the greatest logical fallacy projected upon humanity is the illusion of separation. 100%. 100%. Framestar Films. Peace and greetings, my friend. Peace and greetings. Welcome. Zero says, I had the feeling you was my guru or my master teacher in a past life, Trev. A lot of things match with that feeling I have. Yeah, I mean, hell, for all we know, you could have been my guru in a past life. We could have both studied at the same ashram in the past life. 100. Joanne says, can I share a channeling experience I had back in March? It was so random. Sure. All right, so let's go on to precipitation. This is another rare skill that is also associated with Madame Blavatsky and the bulk of the Mahatma letters, which now repose in the British Museum, were transmitted and received in this matter. Something of the technique is described in the body of the letters, which can be read in the published volume of the Mahatma letters to A.P. Sinnett. The Mahatma letters of A.P. Sinnett that were eventually published in the volume form in 1923. Sinnett was a leading figure in the British Raj as editor of the main English daily paper, The Pioneer. Techniques that were almost commonplace to Indian holy men were something of a miracle to Sinnett and his friends. And one of the many interesting facets of this correspondence is the difference in attitude it reveals between Oriental holy men and colonial Westerners of the period, the 1880s. Mothra says there's definitely some gold in them Mahatma letters. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Definitely. Sinnett initially wants the Mahatmas to apport or precipitate a copy of The Pioneer newspaper in London on the day of publication, a truly miraculous event in those days before airmail, when the sea passage from India would have taken some weeks. The Mahatmas are at some pains to point out that this would not lead to converting the world to their cause, right? But simply bring about heated accusations of fraud, which is very much what happened with other related phenomena. And I get that, right? These yogis that have unlocked these types of possibilities, they already know, and they also talk about this in the yoga books. They already know that when people ask for proof, right, that's not going to convert them. It's not going to open up them to the reality of, consciousness and matter, the reality of Purusha, Shiva, Shakti, Prakriti. It's not going to spiritually open anybody. It's just going to make you want to see it again or doubt it. Even today, right? Even today, if you had somebody who could literally do these type of wonderful things, you're not going to get people saying, oh my God, I believe now that anything's possible. You're going to get people saying that ain't real, that was AI, etc., etc. In a lot of these yoga books, it talks about the focus is not on siddhis. The focus is not on developing powers and abilities. For what? For you to show off to somebody? It's certainly not going to help you attain to greater realization. And that might sound like an excuse to shy away from those, but that's the whole thing. Like, why, if you're in to spirituality and this type of work so that you can gain X-Men powers, if that's your goal, then you're probably not going to get very far, right? That's fine with me. If Jesus Christ and his miracles didn't satisfy the people, what makes you think you being able to shoot a fireball from your fingertips is going to do anything of value? You saw what happened to him, or at least you read what happened to him. Again, not to say that it's not possible, and not to like shy away from it or give a clause of, oh, this might not be real, but like literally, if your point is uh attainment of union with the higher self and the higher reality, then that shit doesn't matter. Oh, the devil knocked a glass from off the shelf. You can do that too. Like, it's not special. You can knock a glass off the shelf. Sunshine Chick, always good to see you. Peace and greetings. Peace and greetings. Joy Empress says, so back on Easter while I was cooking, I was shown the top of the earth with some different being above the earth. I heard Galactic Federation or Council. Then the name Lucifer popped up. Basically, it was saying, I am not who they say I am. I am not who they think I am. 100%, right? That's, at least from my experience, absolutely accurate. And I wonder if you followed up on that. I wonder if you did some further research or maybe some further meditation on that. Because if they are not who they say he is, she is, it is, then who is it? What is it? Great opportunity to explore further. Rudolf Steiner kind of comes to mind for you. Have you ever looked up Rudolf Steiner? He has a very short booklet called The Influences of Lucifer and Ahriman. That might be a good direction for you to check out. The Influences of Lucifer and Ahriman. At least a little something to have a different perspective. It's a short book, easy read, and quite insightful. I need to dust my copy off, honestly. Absolutely. Yeah, Rudolf Steiner. Easy to find. He's not hard to find at all. Look up The Influences of Lucifer and Ahriman. Even if you just type in The Influences of Lucifer, you'll see the whole book. All right. So yeah, evidence of supernatural powers is not going to convert anybody to gnosis. It's just going to make people demand more proof. Sinet initially wants the Mahatmas to report or participate a copy of the Pioneer newspaper in London on the day of publication, a truly miraculous event in those days before airmail, when the sea passages from India would have taken some weeks. The Mahatmas are at some pains to point out that this would not lead to converting the world to their cause, but simply bring about heated accusations of fraud, which is very much what happened with other related phenomena. Already swayed by some malevolent false witness. The Society for Psychical Research investigator of the time was in no mood to take it at all seriously. Tibetan thought power has now, in any case, been rendered obsolete by the modern fax machine. But as in the case of animal magnetism, to circumvent a fact of nature is not to prove its non existence. To circumvent a fact of nature is not to prove its non existence. We built this city. We built this city. On meditation. Sorry for the pun. Couldn't help myself. Oh, yeah. Joy Empress says, thank you. I thought about looking up Lucifer, but I was weary, probably because of what people say about him. I heard some say he's a man, once said they're a woman. Now, look, you had a direct channel and you were still weary about looking up Lucifer. I pay attention to that. See how deep the control goes? You got a direct channel, and instead of following it, instead of trusting yourself, you trusted the control that was already present in your psyche. Just look at that. That's all I'm saying. And I would suggest doing some research. And here's another thing, right? You said, I heard he's a man. I heard that he's a woman. First off, what does that even matter? What would that change for you? What would that change for anyone? Second of all, we're not dealing with things with physical bodies, so that's out the question. It's out the question. Masculinity and femininity on the energy plane, and every plane aside from the physical, has nothing to do with sex organs and has everything to do with mode of communication. Sexuality, gender on every plane except the physical has nothing to do with body parts and everything to do with mode of communication. And with that being said, how they appear to you can and does shift depending on the mode of communication. So you may receive masculine form or feminine form depending on what's being communicated. But see, a deeply conditioned mind wouldn't be able to accept that because people are used to, the word gender being associated with sex organs, but we're not dealing with physical things. Because what's the purpose of sex organs? To reproduce. You're not doing that in the energy plane. Not like that. But yeah, I'm. Please understand, I'm not attacking you or trying to make you feel bad at all. But I am most certainly um, attempting to clarify and show you the thought process. Mothra says Blavatsky sets the record straight on Lucifer in The Secret Doctrine. Joanne says makes sense. Even Kuan Yin has different forms. You're right. That's 2-3D. Yeah. So with what I just said, it's easy to see now. All entities that we can imagine have different forms. There's masculine, feminine, and androgynous forms of every entity that you can imagine. Just look at all the different forms of Shiva, Vishnu, Shakti. You know what I'm saying? Kaj Fav, welcome back. She says people who don't want to know just don't want to know. Sister thought I was stupid for the spiritual things I tried to show her. She demanded proof. NASA and CIA produced proof. She still doesn't. Right. And that's something I learned, and that's something you learned. There are some people who their goal is not to understand. Their goal is to argue. Stay far away from those people when it comes to conversations about this, because they can do nothing but harm your growth. We've all met people who will always provide an argument. And that's fine, right? The world needs people like that. There's somewhere out there that skill that they have will be very useful and appropriate. But it's not useful and appropriate when you're attempting to understand your spiritual nature. All right. All right. Let's continue. My gnosis is pure objective mind. Absolutely necessary type people. Right. Let's stay away from like thinking that, yeah, you get what I'm saying. I know you get what I'm saying. That person that you're talking about most certainly is useful and appropriate somewhere out there. But for this, no. Don Tree. Peace and welcome. Peace and welcome. Okay, let's continue. Slate writing. What is slate writing? Given the ability to manipulate subtle etheric matter, it is a small problem to use it to manipulate pieces of chalk in confined spaces. I actually haven't heard of that one. Psychic photography. This is a similar but slightly easier process than precipitation, as the medium is a light-sensitive negative anyway. The blurring that often occurs may well be due to a lack of definition in the thought image that is projected. Now, that's key right there for those of you who do channel, since we're speaking of channeling. For those of you who do channel, remember a few moments ago, I was talking about etheric friends, etheric help on the other side. What was the exact sentence? He said, in Phoebe Payne's view, which includes clairvoyant perception, these invariably require the involvement of skilled and powerful inner helpers of one kind or another working upon the etheric levels. So here's actually where clairvoyance comes into play. If someone has trained their clairvoyance to a sophisticated level, or if someone is born with a sophisticated level of clairvoyance, you would be able to perceive your inner helpers in a clear way. And somebody who does not have a sophisticated clairvoyance sense, you're going to see it as a blurry thing. You might see it as a collection of light, right? It won't be defined. It won't be defined. It might simply just be light or a feeling. That doesn't detract from its influence or its ability to assist you. It doesn't mean anything other than, if you want to see more clearly, then practice developing those qualities, those faculties. But the sentence here that inspired me of that said, the blurring that often occurs may well be due to a lack of definition in the thought image that is projected. That's another thing. You're not ever actually seeing these entities. You're seeing a thought image that you are projecting. And the last one that he's talking about here is direct voice. This is the speaking of disembodied voices through light paper trumpets or megaphones. Oddly enough, the phenomena is easier to work if there is a background hum of conversation. Hell yeah. As if this stimulates the production of sound waves of etheric origin. As with the appearance of etheric forms in ectoplasmic matter, it is possible to interfere with the substance of the message by concentrated thought, which is another reason why trance-related communication is such an uncertain business. For thought interference can be unconscious as well as conscious, particularly if impelled by some force of emotion. We may perhaps best conclude this section by quoting Phoebe Payne's remarks about test conditions for physical phenomena. The tests may be either simple or for the most stringent and elaborate kind, but those who undertake them rarely have even an elementary understanding of the power of thought and emotion over the subtle and responsive material with which they are working. They grasp the fact that mediums must be carefully handled, and their main conditions accepted. But few realize that the whole subject is governed by a technique as delicate and exact as that of any other scientific experiment. Check the technique. As a scientist may have his research work spoilt by the slightest alteration of temperature or other considerations, so may the bridge of ectoplasmic material be destroyed by numerous factors, which the investigator does not recognize as having any bearing upon the experiment. True psychic investigation needs the collaboration of both occultist and scientist. So not only is it a blessing to find another person with an open mind that's an occultist that you can chit chat with, it's also a blessing to find a scientist, a practical minded, objective person who's open minded and you can conversate with. You can because, like what we said before about the individual who was just stubborn and wanted to fight and argue all the time. That's not that they're right and they're more scientific. They're just a stubborn person who likes to argue. There's a place for that. You can also find other people who are objective minded and scientific who can have great insight on your work. That's one of the best connections if you can find one of those. Sure, you're going to disagree on many things, but when you find the things that you do agree on, that's going to help you to understand your work better, and it'll help them understand their work better. Imagine having a conversation with somebody about astronomy from their angle, and you're talking about astrology from your angle. Imagine a conversation where you can connect the science and the spirituality and find a middle ground that makes sense. Imagine what you both could learn. That's what I'm talking about. Let's give them something to talk about. All right. Super Ash Games, peace and greetings. Welcome. Empress New, peace, and welcome. Empress New says, Trav, you are a true gem. Thank you. Seriously, and I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say our lives are so much better because we have you in our presence. Keep up the great work. One love. Thank you for those kind words, Empress New. I appreciate that. It's good to hear that I'm appreciated for sure. And I see that, and, it really causes me to not take this work for granted. I've said this once before, there was a time where I'd yap on and on about this information and literally nobody gave a damn. And that felt not so good. So it does feel very nice to know that there are people who do care and are impacted positively. So thank you. My Gnosis says, me and my goddess pulled the star card 3 days ago. The path of natural intelligence. As all the tarot cards, there's a lot of things that you can pick out from this, both on the positive and the negative side. A big meditation point on this card. Number one, you see Thoth, Mercury back there, but a big meditation point for this card is the water she's pouring back into the pond. I think that's worthy of some meditation. Now, this card is associated with Aquarius. It's associated with Aquarius. You'll see 8 stars, and the 8 stars all have 8 points. But anyways, yeah, good stuff. Don Tree says, feels good to be here again. Been a minute. Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. Framestar Film says, I have a photograph that I took of a tree silhouetted against the sky some years back. When I took the image into Photoshop and lightened the tree's darkness, a vague but distinct image of Eve and the serpent was revealed. Man, man. And see, like, imagine doing that. Like, imagine working with that and you see that. And as much as you want to share that and tell other people about it, you already know people are going to be like, oh, you added that in there. That's not real. Da, 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 da. Which I think kind of goes to show that those type of experiences are just for you. You know, they're for your edification. Edification. I learned that word from the pastors, to edify one another in the word, in the spirit. Trey Kage says, Dean Radin is a very good example of a scientific, open-minded person. He does practical and objective studies on magic. Dean Radin. Okay. Cage Foss says, I realize those of us with magic are stronger when we don't let people doubt within our atmosphere. No arguing or explaining to people who don't value your gifts. Finding like-minded people feels good. Yes, I think that's actually an underestimated part of this journey because look, many of us have gone through periods of feeling lonely. Like I said, I'm yapping endlessly about my love of this information and nobody cares. So of course, that's going to feel lonely. But at the same time, being young and inexperienced, I desperately wanted friends. I desperately wanted people around me. And that would cause me to make decisions that weren't in my best interest. It was done out of trauma bonding, right? It's a powerful thing to have a sense of boundaries and a sense of worth that is so strong that you are not only willing, but happy to enjoy your own company, even if that means there is nobody to hang out with. I would rather be completely by myself than to have people around me like the one you described who are always ready to argue and doubt and debate. Um, yeah, that adds a certain flow of information and mood that is not useful or appropriate to my goals. I would rather be alone than to have people in my company who don't align with my goals. And that's totally fine. Totally fine. Chicano 42, peace. Chicano says, I'm at a graduation party, but you're the realist. I'm going to be on that playback. Much love, Trav. Much love, Magus Gang. Peace, peace, Chicano. Peace. Good to see you. As always, man. As always. Thank you. Zero says, thanks to you, always, Trav. For some of us, and maybe as every one of us, you change our lives. You've changed my lives, that's for sure. Well, lives. I think I've got one, but who knows? Anyways, the sentiment is, you know, what's the word? Reciprocated. Reciprocated. All right. Let's get on to this next chapter. Dangers of faulty development. Faulty. What does faulty development mean? Faulty. All right. And as we move on into this chapter, I also want to remind you, as you've heard from my previous live streams, I'm currently doing application review calls for my spiritual authority intensive. And this is private one-to-one work for people who are ready to stabilize their practice, ready to build consistency, ready to stop drifting. If that feels like your next step, the application is still open. I'll post the link in the pinned comment here, but I've posted it in my previous videos. If you still are interested in one-to-one coaching with me, and this isn't just listening to me yap for hours or an hour a week. This is customized to you specifically. I'm deeply listening to your pattern, to your goals, and how we can connect those two to success. So if you are interested in that, hit the link that it will be pinned in the comment of this video. And if you wanted to check that now, it's in the link pinned to my most recent live streams. Framestar says, absolutely not that I needed any evidence, but a sign that pointed to the ability to see beyond one way or another. Absolutely. Framestar says, you still good for after the live? Yes, I am. After the live, I will send you a Zoom link. Zoom. Yeah, zoom. Dangers of faulty development. The Circuit of Force, Part 9, January 1940. The Unfortunate. Star Lion. What's up, Trav? Hope all's been well. It has. Most certainly. The devitalizing effect of mystical devotion and the unbalancing effect of psychic development are matters of such common knowledge and observation that there is no need to produce evidence of their existence, for everyone has seen them. Look at what that says, right? The unbalancing effect. So think about being balanced. Now think about being unbalanced. The unbalancing effect of psychic development. Now think about being vitalized. Think about being devitalized, right? Full of energy, full of vigor. Maybe it was just me, but the past couple of days I found myself being very vitalized, more so than usual. And I'm trying to figure out why that is, but it isn't really so important to me why it is. I'm just putting this energy to good use. But think about being vitalized, and think about being devitalized, drained, tired. The devitalizing effect of mystical devotion and the unbalancing effect of psychic development are matters of such common knowledge and observation that there is no need to produce evidence of their existence, for everyone has seen them. Something, however, may usefully be said concerning their cause and cure. The mystic devitalizes himself because his mental attitude inhibits the flow of life force into the physical body, which he regards as an evil to be overcome. Who still thinks that the physical body is an evil that must be battled with and fought and overcome? The sensitive etheric double responds to this attitude. This is why metaphor is so important. This is me saying that, right? Metaphor is so important. Because the object of reality is just raw data. That's it. Raw data. The nose smells things, the mouth tastes things, the eyes see light and darkness, color, the ears hear vibrations. But the subjective mind takes all that raw data and builds a story. And gives it labels and says, oh, this is good, this is bad, I love this, I hate this. This is friend. This is enemy. This is threat. This is pleasure. This is pain. The subjective mind does that. The physical body doesn't do that. The five senses aren't designed to do that. It's just purely raw data. It's a subjective mind that builds a story around that raw data. And that story that you build around the raw data, that has an extremely profound impact on what happens to you on a daily basis. Extremely profound. He says the sensitive etheric double responds. Well, the mystic devitalizes himself because his mental attitude inhibits the flow of life force into the physical body, which he regards as an evil to be overcome. The sensitive etheric double responds to this attitude. The flow of life force is dammed back. No magnetism is picked up from the earth aura, and the vitality of the physical body, being cut off from its resources of supply, dries up to a point where it is no longer adequate to the carrying on of the physiological processes, and all manner of functional diseases of nervous origin develop. So I'd like to ask you right now, while we're at a pause, check your attitude towards your physical body. Check your attitude towards your physical body and to your chemical reactions, your impulses, your desires, your likes, your dislikes. What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be in engagement with this human body? To be in an entanglement with this human body? You heard people say that Earth is a prison. 3D reality is a prison. We're trapped here. It's a prison, the demiurge. Now, that cannot be objectively proven at all. So it's not a fact, right? There's nothing that you can look out there and see and prove that existence on Earth is a prison. That's all subjective. That's a story that somebody told you. So can you see what would happen to the subconscious mind if every day you step out your house believing subconsciously that Earth is a prison, 3D reality is a prison? Who is in a prison? Prisoners. So what you're really saying with that is you are a spiritual prisoner. What did you do? What did you do to be imprisoned on Earth? In other words, that's no different from the Christian philosophy of original sin. That ain't no different from believing that you were a sinner before you even had a chance to sin, right? And we all heard that. You're a sinner simply because you're a human being and you're in the flesh. You sin by default. Ain't nothing you can do to help it, to fix it. You're immediately a prisoner. That's the same exact thing as people who promote this whole 3D reality is a prison. So what I'm saying is, like, those types of belief have a subconscious effect on your everyday life, on everything you do. It might not be like an obvious thing, but that's in the back of your head all the time. Damn, I'm imprisoned. For what? For what? And you hear people yapping about the demiurge as if they know what they're talking about. I'll have you know that the demiurge wasn't always talked about as the bad guy. Perhaps somebody changed that story. In any case, what I'm saying is, whatever's going on in your life, pay close attention to the story that you're telling yourself. Because outside of that story, life is nothing. In this physical body, life is nothing but raw data. Raw data. I'll tell you what, man, one of the funniest things in my life, and I need to dig it up out of one of my dead computers. Back in my days of making music, my brothers brought these two homeless guys. I don't know if they were homeless, but they were pretty, these streety dudes, into the studio, and just, they recorded this whole mixtape, right? They had a 40 ounce with them. one microphone. The both of them were right there in front of that microphone. They didn't even really they were sharing one pair of headphones, so they weren't really on beat. But these two guys were going at it. They were just rapping their little hearts out, wasn't on beat, saying all kinds of crazy stuff. And you could even hear my brothers laughing in the background on the mic. that was one of the funniest things that I have access to. Not laughing at them, but like the energy they had, like whatever state they were in, them dudes was free. They didn't give a damn, and they were so happy to be in front of that mic. If you ask them, they was the crime mob. They was the top dudes on the street. They had access to everything and all the power. I don't know. When I listen to that, it's hilarious to me still, but I get something else from it. You know, there's a certain sense that them folks had, at least just in that moment. Whenever I dig that out of my dead computer, I'm going to upload it. And not for y'all, but for me, I'm going to upload it so I don't lose it again. There's something about that sense of freedom and disregard for reality, right? A certain sense of delusion that can be useful. In any case, let's get back to this. The mystic devitalizes himself because his mental attitude inhibits the flow of life force into the physical body, which he regards as an evil to be overcome. The sensitive etheric double responds to this attitude. The flow of life force is dammed back. No magnetism is picked up from the earth aura, and the vitality of the physical body being cut off from its sources of supply, the vitality of the physical body dries up to a point where it is no longer adequate to the carrying on of the physiological processes. And all manner of functional diseases of nervous origin develop. Of course, it is not possible for the average person entirely to inhibit the flow of all magnetism in its age-old channels, or he would die out of hand. Though this has occurred in cases of Eastern mystics who added a knowledge of mind power to their mysticism, but even the untrained mind, if single-pointed, is able to close its channels sufficiently to bring about that curious sickliness and physical frailness so characteristic of the devout. Man. The wonderful healings in response to group prayer on their behalf that such persons experience are due to the influx of vital force they receive from the people who pray for them. It is almost a matter of common knowledge in such circles that there is nothing so exhausting and devitalizing as personal attendance upon a sickly mystic. Sheesh. There is nothing so exhausting and devitalizing as personal attendance upon a sickly mystic. The mental disorganization. Hold on. I'm going to have to highlight that one. Because unfortunately, you can become a psychic vampire without realizing it. In the beginning of the legendary occult book, Basic Magic by Philip Cooper, he says a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And he was talking about magical practices. A little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing because somebody can read just a little bit, learn some skills and some techniques without understanding the depth of them, and become something not very helpful to the collective. And it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they had an evil heart. It's simply that the techniques work. The magic is real. And without an inner structure, sometimes the technique can cause more harm than good. Have you ever been in the presence of somebody who literally drained you the longer you stuck around them? And they might have the sweetest heart. They might have the best intentions, but something about them just drains your energy. Very real. God bless you, but can't do that. Can't do that. Atropa, peace and greetings. I don't know if I said greetings to you tonight, but I see you and welcome. Welcome, welcome. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says, this is good. Can't go wrong with Dion Fortune. Cannot go wrong with Miss Dion Fortune. In this case, it's Gareth Knight. No, this is Dion Fortune right here, yeah. Zero says, the technique work, but the practitioner isn't ready. That's it right there. The techniques work, but the practitioner isn't ready. On the Sims that I play, my spellcasters, right? You have different levels of being a spellcaster, and there's all kinds of spells. I remember a time where I tried to cheat all the spell books to learn all the spells. But the thing is, if your spellcaster isn't leveled up to use those spells, number one, they can barely do them. And number two, the chance of failure increases. So like you might try to heal somebody or revitalize somebody and you end up completely depleting them and they pass out. Or worse. One of the craziest experiences that I had was I taught one of my spellcasters, my main one, my favorite one, the spell of duplication. It's called Duplicatio. And she went on this rampage cloning herself to the point that it was starting to ruin my game because I couldn't catch all these clones of her. So we had to go on this mission of hunting down her clones and killing them, which was pretty dreadful. But I think it was a good metaphor. A little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. Kashfa says, Travis, this is all so on point. Therapist just asked me to write my top values and what's keeping me from them. I literally said vitality, and I've been feeling depressed and anxious from how I interpreted the world. Look at what you said there at the end, how I interpret the world. It's not that, right? And I'm echoing this. It's not that you, or it's not the world's doing anything to you. It's your subjective interpretation of it. That's the difference from motivation and anxiety. If you think about tomorrow and feel anxiety, it's not tomorrow that did it to you because tomorrow doesn't exist yet. It's the story you're telling yourself about tomorrow that is making you anxious. Motivation works the same way. If you think about tomorrow and you're motivated, it's the story that you're telling yourself about tomorrow. It's literally that simple. And every one of you listening has the very capable ability to change the story. I control the context. That's what I say, right? You control your context. Starline says, yo, Trav, check out that movie, Obsession. It's actually pretty good, even though most modern movies are ass. Most modern movies are ass. That's why I don't be taking movie suggestions. But I'm going to hold you to it, Starline. If I watch this movie and it is also ass, Obsession. Me and my son have been watching the Backrooms video clips, and we've been leading up to watching the actual movie. I'm excited for it. I want to see the Backrooms. I hope they didn't ruin it. Zero says, yes, I realize I experience some psychic phenomena of people that drain me, entangle me, but they are not bad, just don't know what they are behind their personalities. Absolutely. Word of mouth guy. Peace, 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 God. Happy early birthday. Happy Gemini season to you, my friend. Happy early birthday to you. Well, I don't know if it's early, but happy Gemini season. To synonym and analog what you want, Synchronicity, Third Eye Tyrone dropped a joint symbolizing video games, Yu Gi Oh! Specifically, and navigating the illusion. Hmm. Hmm. Third Eye Tyrone. Nice, nice. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says banishing is very important in my practice. I used to skip it and get undesirable results. Yeah. Yeah. Starline says, why did it seem as though happiness was easier to attain when we were kids, or am I tripping? Well, think about how many barriers happiness had to jump over to get to you. As a kid, how many hoops, obstacles, and barriers did happiness have to jump over before it arrived? I think about today. How many? What's the checklist that you have that happiness must answer before it's able to show up for you? It's got to be this. You got to have that. I need this. I need that. That might be a clue. Cottage Foss says, why I need a new one. I didn't see anything based off of what you said to make that statement that you need a new one. I think that's a great question. Um, Knowing your top values can be a powerful indicator with what you should be spending your time on. Alchemic Energy, peace and greetings. Alchemic Energy says, I was just watching Dr. Tracy Mark's video on people that drain you. Synchronicity is real. Oh, yeah. There's a field. There is a field of consciousness that we are connected to, without a doubt. Zero says, I want to share this. I have Venus and Gemini in the 12th house, and strong Rahu and Libra in the 4th house, and even Neptune in Uranus in the 7th house. That's a whole combination of obsessive love. There's obsession. And yeah, man, I've been obsessive with a lot of women throughout my life, and putting all that psychic energy to them. She always glows up without even me meeting me for months. Crazy how we are capable to send energy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Word of mouth guy says Tracy Marks, that nigga for sure. Tracy Marks and Third Eye Tyrone. I just have this list that's filling up. But yeah, speaking of the astrology, my roommate showed me this app that he has where you can hold it up to the sky and you'll see where the planets and stars are. And like the sun was still up, it was sunset, and you could see Venus with the naked eye and Jupiter. But when you pulled out that app, you could see that Jupiter and Venus and Mercury and even Saturn and the moon at that moment were all in alignment. Jupiter and Venus in Gemini still. Mercury in Gemini as well. A lot of stuff going on in Gemini right now. Saturn down there in Aquarius. No, that was the moon. Excuse me. The moon is in Aquarius right now. Well, it was at the time. All right. Zero says, man, I love today's lecture. This has given me a lot of answers and clarity. Yeah. And I love this book because it has a lot of cool insights on energy transference, the etheric body and etheric energy. And it kind of puts all those things in perspective. All right, back to this chapter. Can you hear that background mantra? How are you guys enjoying that background mantra? I've had this going for about a day and a half now. It's a Durga mantra. Durga. All right, so the mental disorganization is more commonly seen in psychics than in mystics, though mystics share in it just as psychics also share in the physical disorganization. I like that. So one thing we can see about mystics and psychics is physical disorganization. And one thing we can also see is mental disorganization. Again, it's not that mystics and psychics are bad people. It's that there's a lot going on subjectively and energetically. Oh, snap. Zero says, absolutely love it, Trav. I listened to that mantra specifically. It's so powerful. Yeah, as soon as I heard it, I felt it. And I had to lock on to it. Hold on to it. Good, good. Kai5 says, bought some tarot cards, jumped the gun because I got an art novelty set before. Remember, I need original because I have no idea what these cards mean. Easy to find out, though. There's no shortage of tarot lessons online, but also in books. So the mental disorganization is more commonly seen in psychics than in mystics, though mystics share in it just as psychics also share in the physical disorganization. But one is pretty safe in saying that the devout person who has dedicated his life to what he understands by God is more likely to lose his physical health, but keep his mental balance than the one who has devoted himself to the development of his own powers. Interesting how that works. One is pretty safe in saying that the devout person who has dedicated his life to what he understands by God is more likely to lose his physical health but keep his mental balance than the one who has devoted himself to the development of his own psychic powers. Now, that's a synchronicity for me because I was just thinking about that earlier today. About how maintaining a powerful frame and practicing yoga and practicing these spiritual techniques, I think really attributes to keeping me in good health and attributes to, keeping my body nice, so to speak. Hell, even improving. It will generally be found that the psychic who becomes physically sickly and hypersensitive is the one who combines devotion with his psychism. God, when worshipped as spirit and nothing else, is indeed a Moloch who devours his children. Uh-oh. Somebody done logged off. Somebody done clicked off the live stream. Let me read that again so somebody else can click off. I don't know if you caught that, but check this out. We're talking about mystics and psychics, and we're talking about mental disorganization and physical disorganization. But one is pretty safe in saying that the devout person, right, devout to God, who has dedicated his life to what he understands by God, is more likely to lose his physical health, but keep his mental balance than one who has devoted himself to the development of his own powers. It will generally be found that the psychic who becomes physically sickly, and hypersensitive, that's one who combines devotion with his psychism. God, when worshipped as spirit and nothing else, is indeed a Moloch who devours his children. In other words, what are you feeding? What are you feeding? And what are the options? This reality is and has always been somewhat parasitic. In other words, something must feed on something else. Oh, so you're doing the bending. Is that what it is? It's truth is stranger than fiction, and everything has an answer. Everything has an answer. My Gnosis, appreciate you. Hit the like button if you are viewing this video and this information is relevant to you. If you find anything here useful and appropriate, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and hit the like button. Kyle the God Pod. Kai L the God Pod. Good to see you. Always good to see you, my friend. My spiritual big brother. I'm still rocking with you after all these years. I respect your growth and your contribution to this thing we call higher consciousness. Flowers, my brother. Listen, man, I appreciate you. And I know that, back in the Facebook days, we had more conversations. And I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. I know the situation we talked about, dealing with you and certain ones that you care about. I hope that has resolved itself, and I hope that you found much growth and much self-knowledge and much self-power. Peace to you, my friend. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to let that line sit for just a little bit because I think there's something to it, because we just got finished talking about Demiurge and Prison Planet. Perhaps it is perspective, and perhaps your perspective determines what your reality is, like literally. The mental unbalance of the psychic is entirely due to the failure to understand the mechanism of the mind. The mental unbalance of the psychic is entirely due to the failure to understand the mechanism of the mind. The mind can, by means of concentration of attention, be divided up into its component parts, be dissected out, as it were. And this is done when the higher modes of consciousness are brought into action. Normal consciousness, with its direction by the will and judgment, can be closed down. And super consciousness or subconsciousness opened by the appropriate. But these are not under the direct control of the will and judgment. And an elaborate technique exists and has to be carefully learnt in order that indirect control may be acquired and the integrity of the personality maintained. It's something in that right there too. Something in that right there too. How far back? Because if you study the yogic texts, you study what they talk about as far as physical yoga and even mental yoga over the human faculties, the physical animal with its subjective methods. Yoga's talking about control over this animal. Mind control, that's a powerful word, but it's not about controlling the minds of others. It's about controlling your wild mind. And when you control that wild mind, guess what? You start to put that wild body under subjection. And when I talk about the body, I'm talking about the chemicals that flow through it, the patterns that it perpetuates. You may not see it this way, but I see the human body as its own entity. And I see the mind as its entity, and I see the subconscious mind as its entity, and I see the higher self as an entity. And all of these are working together. All of these are what you call you. And I take time to identify who's driving the vehicle at any given time. Sometimes the body needs what it needs, and we let the body do what it does. Sometimes the mind, the conscious mind, the will needs what it needs, and we do what it does. Sometimes the subconscious mind needs something, right? Somebody just mentioned, I like to watch videos from the 2000s because it helps to remind me of my childhood. What part of the mind is asking for that? And then, of course, there's the higher self. Sometimes that higher self needs what it needs from you right now. But here's the thing. Do you have the discipline to obey that higher version of yourself, that highest version of yourself? Does that body have the discipline? Does that mind have the discipline? Does that subconscious have the discipline to work on one Honda Accord? Or do you run? Do you distract yourself? Do you get caught up in these loops and loops and loops of distraction? Meanwhile, the higher self, who is so patient, so loving, will let you run through those loops until you come to the point where you understand, you know what? Maybe there's a better way. Because see, the body and the mind, they operate on a time frame because they both exist in real time. The subjective mind, the subconscious mind doesn't exist in real time. But the physical body and the mind, they feel the pressures of time. Uh-oh, I have a deadline. I got to make it. I got to make it. But if I don't, something bad's going to happen. Anxiety rises. And as that anxiety rises, it becomes ever increasingly difficult to listen to the subconscious or to listen to the higher self. Who's driving the ship at that point? Who's saying time's running out? Who's saying I'm getting too old? Who's saying I can't do this? Is the higher self saying that to you? Is the subconscious mind saying that to you? Is the conscious mind saying that? Is the body saying that? Who's saying I'm hungry and I need to get me 2 boxes of them Debbie cakes and eat them all tonight? Who's saying that? Who's saying the game is on tonight and I need to go ahead and run that bet? I need to go ahead and run my prize picks. Who's saying that? Who's saying I need to meditate tonight? I need to sit down and actually meditate. I need to light that candle. You see what I'm saying? Like when you identify that there are different levels of consciousness and arrange them in order, you can manage better what's happening. One Honda Accord, right? There's 4 seats in there. Everybody can fit. Seatbelts on, but who's driving? Who's driving? And what color is that Honda Accord? Kajfa says, I feel like there's a veil between me and my higher self. I want to be connected. Been trying to hear it through the noise in my head. Yeah. Okay, so there's a veil between your physical body and your mind. There's a veil between your mind and your subconscious mind. There are veils, absolutely. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a hindrance. It's in place. Because if there wasn't a veil, you would be flooded with a lot of information. So the veils serve a very useful and appropriate purpose. It's not that you're not connected. It's about identifying the different levels of operation. Just like a computer, one part of the computer runs the time. One part of the computer runs who's getting the most resources of any program at any given time. Like there's different applications of focus for the computer. Same thing with the human. Same thing with the spirit. You look at the image of the tree of life or any diagram that shows you a cosmic architecture, a cosmic framework. You're looking at one entity, but it's different levels of focus. This part down here is managing the day-to-day activities. This part here is managing the memories of yesterday and the karma of yesterday. This part's managing the past lives. This part's managing the bigger picture. So yes, there's a veil, and it's useful and appropriate. You wouldn't want them to blend. You're not disconnected, but it's about the attention. Where are you placing your attention? And if we wanted to go deeper, who is you? What is you? Zero says, man, when we complain of being patient, remember our higher selves are always there. Crazy insight. Right. The higher self has been here before you were born and will remain after you die. So it already is fully aware of what's going on here. Oh, I'm wasting time. I got to reach enlightenment. I got to wake up. I'm wasting my potential. Who's saying that? Starline says, life is smooth when I listen to my inner voice. Usually when I go against it is when shit becomes bumpy. 100%, my friend, 100%. And I agree with you. Because at some point I bumped my head enough to say, let me start listening. Let me start listening. And I haven't turned back since. The body is always going to want what it wants. Always. It's not going to stop wanting what it wants. But there's a time and place for those wants. Alchemic Energy says the observer and the observed are part of the same continuous cycle. Right. Okay. All right. Normal consciousness with its direction by the will and judgment can be closed down, and super consciousness or subconsciousness opened by the appropriate methods. That veil you talked about, yes, like I said, it is possible to open that. That's a lot of information to deal with, but with the right faculties in place, with the right sophistication of focus and attention, it can be a useful and appropriate experience to do that. For sure. But these are not under the direct control of the will and judgment. And an elaborate technique exists and has to be carefully learnt in order that indirect control may be acquired by the integrity of the personality maintained. So that's the thing. Like I said, it's a lot of information, a flood of information. And for the untrained mind, the personality can get lost in that information. But she says here, these techniques have to be carefully learned in order that indirect control may be acquired and the integrity of the personality be maintained. It is the lack of this knowledge and power that causes the untrained mind to split wider and wider apart when the levels of the mind are disconnected in order to attain extended consciousness, until the point is reached when it can no longer be reintegrated at the end of the psychic trance and is permanently out of control and dissociated. That sounds dreadful. Control is maintained, firstly, by the power of concentration, which can switch the attention from plane to plane and back again at will. This is greatly aided by the utilization of the power of associated ideas as developed in the occult symbol systems, without the use of which, in my opinion, Psychic work is neither safe nor reliable. The second great factor in maintaining coordination and control is a clear understanding of the manner in which the mind works, thus enabling one to realize that psychic visions are subjective representations of otherworld things and not direct perception. I'll read that again. The second great factor in maintaining coordination and control is a clear understanding of the manner in which the mind works, thus enabling one to realize that psychic visions are subjective representations of other world things and not direct perception. And that what the mind has made, the mind can unmake. Once again, what the mind has made, the mind can unmake. That is highlightable. That is highlightable. One is not therefore hallucinated by one's own subjective mind pictures, believing them to have an objective existence, when, as a matter of fact, they are such stuff as dreams are made of, being symbolic representations of realities of another dimension. Hallucination in these matters is very dangerous, for it can lead on to obsessions. There's that word, obsessions. For it can lead on to obsessions if the symbol image represents an active potency that is not under proper control. The occultist employs the ceremonial technique of the magic circle and the triangle of art, my Goetia peoples, in order to ensure the control of the forces and beings thus evoked and so prevent obsession by them. But the uninitiated psychic, while his spiritualistic technique may, if learnt properly, be quite adequate to control the spirits of the departed, will find it a very different matter should he, by chance, contact the kind of forces with which the occultist is accustomed to work. It is the fact that he does not normally contact these forces because he does not possess the keys to their use that constitutes his protection. Ooh. You know, when people talk about needing to be initiated to do their specific magical work, what they're really talking about is, hopefully, they understand the keys that allow for their protection, and they're able to transmit that to the person who's initiated. But if someone says that they're initiating you into something and you don't receive that, then you're not really being initiated into it. Typically, the keys that protect you in working with certain energies and certain forces are mental frameworks and energetic frameworks. They're not physical keys. They're not magic words like abracadabra. If they're magic words, they're things like maintain your frame. I control the context. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. Because these things start to develop parameters and boundaries around your consciousness so that when working with certain forces, you don't resort into losing yourself. I remember first embarking upon expanding my psychic abilities, and I did not have sophisticated frameworks. And what I immediately began to find is that I was overwhelmed with the thoughts, feelings, and desires and fears and pains of other people. And that did not feel good. This was working with the Necronomicon. And I began to easily tap into other people. I began to tap into their thoughts, their fears, their desires, and it felt gross. It felt nasty. I learned that I did not want to know what's in other people's heads. That was not cool. That was not fun. With certain keys in place, now you can embark upon that kind of work and not be overwhelmed with the aspects of that force that are not useful and appropriate to you. I remember feeling someone else's fear, someone that I knew personally, and I didn't like that because it caused me to see them differently, you know? In any case, when we talk about initiation into a certain practice or whatever, that's generally what we're talking about. Frameworks of thought and frameworks of emotional management. Does that make sense? I'm gonna assume that it does. Well, I hope it does. Starline says, I love when you drop random lore about your past, about your life or past, because that gives us valuable insight into this magic thing. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's the intention, right? Clearly, I'm not just yapping to yap. A lot of the things that I say are related to what we're reading because it's my hope that it sparks a similar memory in you, something you can relate to. Zero says, Trav, man, 1,000% accurate. I felt that way some days. I searched that as is an issue of Cancer sign and born on the 11th. But with meditation and discipline, it's checked. But yeah, man, 100% know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah. Framestar Film says the psychic I met told me she couldn't travel on the bus because of the overcrowding of thoughts and emotions of others in her energy field. Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah, and I think that embarking upon psychic ability without certain keys, that's what you're going to encounter first. I have encountered that. I can remember I picked up the Necronomicon and I practiced the mantra. I practiced my visualization. I focused on the sigil. I had my creepy music going. I was into it. And then I made a decision. All right, I'm going to go to the grocery store. And that experience immediately turned uh, my perspective on that thing 180 degrees. I was like, nah, this is not what I thought it was going to be. This is gross. But I learned later on that there are certain ways. What was happening is I was losing myself in that field. I had entered a certain field and I lost myself in it. So it wasn't me anymore. It was everyone else. And I can imagine that's what she was feeling. But imagine, right, if you learn to maintain your frame, to have a solid sense of self, to have an inner knowing of you being the center of the universe, you can build a boundary around yourself, right? You can build a boundary, not like, oh, I need to protect myself, but more of, I know what is me and I know what is not me. And having that simple discernment, now you can travel through that crowd of thoughts and that crowd of feelings, and you can even pinpoint where they're coming from. Who wants to be psychic and just have your ears open to thoughts and feelings, not knowing where they're coming from? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's ways about this, there's keys to this. That's what these meditations are good for. That's what these practices are good for. That's what the work is. See, like when we say doing the work, it's not just abstract. Let me just meditate on something or do some kind of mantra. Like, all of these different exercises have a purpose and they have a result in the practitioner. Like, is that what we think about when we say doing the work? Do we realize that the work that we do has an end result? And typically that end result is some type of sophistication in the practitioner. And becoming sophisticated in Your relationship with energy affords you a higher capability than who you were before being sophisticated in your relationship with energy. And yeah, that's another heavy one, right? Framestar Film says it leads to an idea or the question of, are all our thoughts our own all the time? Yes, right? Yeah, right. And Gareth Knight stated that in that previous chapter, or he stated something about that when he talked about the hopes and the prayers of people, right? I'm going to pray for you. We're all going to pray for this person. That actually does have an influence, if done properly, on the subject, on the person. I wonder if celebrities and like famous people get spiritual training. You ever wondered about stuff like that? Like imagine having millions of people focused on your image. That has to do something, or that has to have some effect or impact on the individual. It has to. Let me take a real quick break. Won't be longer than like 3 to 5 minutes. Make sure my son enjoyed his meal. Be right back. All right. All right. So here we are. Here we are. How we doing? How we doing, my friends? I see you. I see you. Powerful, powerful Venus. Zero, powerful Venus. All right, let's continue. Shall we? Where did we leave off? I think we're further up, weren't we? Okay, yeah, we were up here somewhere. Yeah, the keys. Okay, the keys. So, the uninitiated psychic, while his spiritualistic... Let me go all the way back. The occultist employs the ceremonial technique of the magic circle and the triangle of art in order to ensure the control of the forces and beings thus evoked, and so prevent obsession. Obsession. Once again, right, in my past experience, I've gone through these pitfalls. Maybe because I'm blessed, or maybe because who knows why. I remember my experience with Andros. That's what caused my obsession. I didn't work with Andros in a useful and appropriate way, and it really took hold of my experience to the point that it was contagious, where he would be jumping onto other people, right? And unfortunately, my true story of what happened with Andros is not something I can share because real people were affected. But I can surely say that my obsession became extremely intense. And like I said, it got to the point that it manifested into other people in a very tangible and obvious way. And that taught me an extremely valuable lesson. Extremely valuable lesson. I wasn't ready to wield for it. And it's, hear me now, because you might not hear what I'm saying. It's not that Andros is the most powerful goetic entity in the universe. That's not it. What's it is that I was cultivating a level of focus and a level of concentration, a level of power, that the thing that I was focused on came to life in a real way without boundaries and without borders. So it could have been any spirit. It could have been Mickey Mouse, right? The occultist employs the ceremonial technique of the magic circle and the triangle of art in order to ensure the control of the forces and beings thus evoked, and so prevent obsession by them. But the uninitiated psychic, while his spiritualistic technique may, if properly learnt, be quite adequate to control the spirits of the departed, will find it a very different matter should he by chance contact the kind of forces with which the occultist is accustomed to work. It is the fact that he does not normally contact these forces because he does not possess the keys to their use that constitutes his protection. That's something that you earn, or that is something that is transmitted to you by someone else who has learned it. That's me saying that, right? Because we talk about initiation, whether it's from a guru, whether it's from a teacher, the same way that Master Roshi taught Krillin and Goku the Kamehameha, right? Someone who's earned the keys can teach it to somebody else. But in these days, and right, not to teach somebody else, but also the keys that protect them from the damage of misuse. That's why I said that. But in these days, when the knowledge of not only the occult doctrines, but the occult method is becoming increasingly widespread, psychics who have developed their psychism on spiritualistic lines sometimes try and put into application what they read, and the results are apt to be startling. Startling. There you go. LVX777. Peace and welcome back. Om Dum Durgaya Namah. The average undeveloped person can make nothing of these books. The average undeveloped person can make nothing of these books because he does not possess the necessary basis in a trained mind. But the psychic has higher centers wide open, has no power either to check or select the influences that enter them. If he once leaves the levels he understands and to which his technique is adapted, and contacts the far higher voltages with which the occultist works. I have seen some pretty startling consequences from doing such things, and some pretty disastrous ones as well. So you can tell that to the next person that tries to tell you this stuff is bullshit. Well, it's probably, yeah, it is bullshit to you because, what does he say here? It's bullshit to you because you do not possess the necessary basis in a trained mind. And that's the way it is. Plenty of people have come through these types of live streams and said, hogwash. This is all BS. Devil worship. Of course they're going to say that. Of course they're going to say that. No harm, no foul. And anyone talking to you, telling you that your interest in the occult is nonsense, it is nonsense to them because they do not possess the necessary basis in a trained mind. Continuing forward. Psychics developed along spiritualistic lines with years of experience behind them very often fail to realize that when they touch the occult contacts, they're entering upon an entirely new field to which their previous experience is not an adequate guide. New field. New field. I have a lot to say about that, but we should finish this part first. Being accustomed to teach, they are apt to be reluctant to learn. This is, no doubt, a very human and understandable failing, but it is also a very dangerous one. And I would urge all psychics who have not had the initiate's training to refrain from tampering with elemental forces or the old gods. I would also point out to them that the initiate gets his training on the physical plane from other initiates, and that it occupies several years and is never, in any circumstances, bestowed by means of inner plane experiences received when out of the body. I would also point out to them that the initiate gets his training on the physical plane from other initiates, and that it occupies several years and is never, in any circumstance, bestowed by means of inner plane experiences received when out of the body. These we call illuminations, and they are never to be confused with the laborious training that constitutes initiation, as can easily be proved when it comes to the exercise of the occult powers and their practical applications. Your visions aren't going to tell you how to practically apply them. There is one more point of danger which has to be considered in relation to the development of the higher powers, and it is the failure to realize it, which is the cause of many distressing accidents, many distressing incidents. As I have already pointed out, Kundalini or personal magnetism, when roused, ascends from the earth or physical vitality center to the moon or sex center. It should then, if properly controlled, rise still further to the sun center or the solar plexus. And it is from this point that occult work begins. Travis speaking here. If you begin to get this surge of vitality and it rises up, it very likely will come to you in a form of sexual energy, very strong, very potent, and very much wanting to be channeled outward. A more advanced technique is to allow that energy to ascend further up until it reaches the heart chakra. And only then are you practically using this energy influx in a way to move you forward on your path. And hey, I understand, easier said than done. But just know, let it be in the back of your mind from this day forward, when you feel that influx of energy, a little bit more potent than usual. While the easy answer might seem to just do what you normally do, maybe, just maybe, attempt to continue channeling that energy upward. You might be very pleased with the results of that. As I've already pointed out, Kundalini or personal magnetism, when roused, ascends from the earth or physical vitality center to the moon center or the sex center. It should then, if properly controlled, rise still further to the sun center or the solar plexus, and it is from this point that occult work begins. If, however, there is imperfect thought control or the sex life is inadequately regulated, leakage of force is liable to occur at this level, resulting in a most dangerous stimulus to the passions. Before such development is undertaken, the power of concentration must have been thoroughly acquired so that the student can rely on being able to banish from his mind all unwanted thoughts. Till this is achieved, no good occult work is possible, let alone safe. Thought control is most carefully taught by a series of graded exercises for several years in the outer court of the fraternity of the inner light. And by the end of that course, the student should be able to banish any thoughts that he does not want. Can you imagine that level of mind control upon yourself? That you can banish the thoughts that you don't want at will? Do you believe that that's even possible? The rousing of the magnetic forces latent in the etheric body can then be safely undertaken, provided there is experienced direction to supervise the work. It is because experienced supervision is essential that our correspondence courses stop with the outer court. Students, however, promising being taken no further if they cannot work under personal supervision. Now, it is not enough to have such perfect mind control that all sensual thoughts can be completely and permanently banished from consciousness. Because, as a certain wise pagan remarked, the more you drive nature out of the front door, the more she will fly in by the window. Sex is a function, not an emotion. Let me read that again. The more you drive nature out of the door, the more she will fly in by the window. Sex is a function, not an emotion. And it cannot be treated in such cavalier fashion without disastrous consequences. Its forces shall rise and fall with well marked periodicity in both men and women, and this periodicity is due to endocrine action. The forces of sex can be controlled and directed, but to attempt to cut them out of life completely is to court disaster. And it is to this fallacious attempt that the great bulk of nervous disorders are due. The problem is not a simple one, and I do not propose to discuss its solution in these pages. It is very difficult. It is a very difficult problem, therefore, to know how to approach the task of developing the magnetic force of persons whose circumstances oblige to deal with their sex life by means of sublimation. For beyond question, the rousing of Kundalini is a tremendous sexual stimulus. Oh, there's my battery. I better change it. We're almost done here. But let me change this battery first. Om Durgaya Namaha. Om Durgaya Namaha. And I think we're back. There we are. Om Dum Durgaya Namaha. There we go. All right. We're back. Ryan's Knowledge Room. Peace and greetings. I signed up for one-on-one coaching, bro. I didn't receive an email. Yeah. I got your application. I've been going through the other ones. Working my way to you. Let me know if you have time tomorrow to talk about this on a quick Zoom call. If not, we can schedule maybe Monday or so. But yeah, I've been working through the applications over the weekend. I didn't quite email everybody just yet, but I most definitely received yours. 11:11. But yeah, working my way through everybody. It's all good. I got it. Dr. Lakeith, peace and greetings, my friend. Peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. I appreciate you. Have you tried lasagna? It's my favorite. All right, so the last bit here. Now that we've got the batteries sorted. So it is a very difficult problem, therefore, to know how to approach the task of developing the magnetic force of persons whose circumstances oblige to deal with their sex life by means of sublimation. For beyond question, the rousing of Kundalini is a tremendous sexual stimulus, as is perfectly understood in the East. There is a certain point in occult development when the sex life is stirred up, stirred. Once that point has been safely overpassed, the vital forces can be turned to magical purposes and no longer give trouble on the physical plane. Magic being the finest and most satisfying form of sublimation there is. But whilst that phase is being passed through, the initiate who has no physical plane outlet in normal sex life that can be used after the manner of a lightning conductor is in the position of an acrobat who is learning trapeze tricks without the use of a safety net. If he misses his hold or miscalculates his strength, the subsequent crash is a very serious matter. People lose their heads badly on these occasions. If they lose their self-control as well, a social crash is probable. And if they maintain it, a mental crash is certain. So they are between the devil and the deep blue sea. To such, I would say, unless you have in your life the conditions that make it possible for you to pass through this phase without undue risk, you are unwise to attempt it. For such, the mystic way of sublimation is the better path. Far be it from me to advise people to outrage their consciences and inflict social injury on others until the Anglo-Saxon aptitude towards sex and its problems changes profoundly. We must be content to suffer in order that we may fulfill all righteousness. People without private means cannot afford to outrage convention, and to advise otherwise is to plunge them into misery. Meanwhile, until such time as more hygienic and humane ideals shall rule our social life, people in difficult circumstances have to find such compromises as shall make life endurable. A long step in this direction is achieved when it is realized our moral code is founded on social custom, has changed from reign to reign with the influence of the ruling monarch, that it badly needs revision, and that no man or woman need consider themselves sinners on account of their natural feelings. Run it back. No man or woman need consider themselves sinners on account of their natural feelings. A very true word was said by Charles Morgan in his preface to the published edition of his play, The Flashing Stream, admitted on all sides to be one of the great plays of this or any age. He says, the face of the whole world would be changed if the experience of sex were considered to be innocent unless its circumstances made it guilty. that can be very powerful for some shadow work, for sure. I've certainly been meditating on a degree of this concept. Absolutely, right? The face of the whole world would be changed if the experience of sex were considered to be innocent, unless its circumstances made it guilty. I would recommend to the serious consideration of my readers the whole essay on singleness of mind, which precedes the play in the printed volume. It is a notable exposition of the principles underlying sexual ethics. And what a segue into the next chapter, which is actually sexual ethics in occultism. Now, this is going to be a pretty powerful chapter, not because everyone loves to talk about sex, but also because, from the occult perspective, the sexual center is the moon center, it's the Yasod center, it's the Swadhisthana chakra center, and it is the powerhouse, the storage center where most of us pull our so-called magic from. So this is going to be a good one for next week. For next week. Next week. All right. So I have been pretty busy this week, and I've got to actually get back to some work. As always, I enjoy this time with you all. Excellent lessons, excellent learning. And I'll tell you something else. Right now, if you feel like things are a bit difficult, maybe more difficult than usual, or if you feel like you're really supposed to be coming up right now, you're really supposed to be experiencing a breakthrough right now, but things are actually being kind of difficult for you, understand this. A lot of people say, oh, I'm being tested, or oh, this is just a test. The universe is testing me. God is testing me, or any of that nonsense. Nobody's testing you. The world isn't testing you. God isn't testing you. The universe isn't testing you, because the universe doesn't do that. Why are you testing somebody, especially when you are expecting abundance, right? It's not about testing. What's actually happening is, yes, you are most certainly moving into a new level for yourself. You're most certainly moving into a new paradigm for yourself, a powerful paradigm. And here's the thing. This new paradigm requires a new you. You're going to be dealing with, a new level of abundance, a new level of stress that comes with that abundance, a new level of everything. So really what this is a transition period. What you're experiencing is this new level of influence. Think about it like this, right? If you were to become the president of the United States, you're going to be experiencing a profound level of stress that the average person could not deal with, would break very quickly. So in order to deal with that profound level of stress, you have to work your way up into having a frame, right? A frame that can handle yourself and still perform. Just like when we talked earlier about the psychic ability, how a person who suddenly unlocks psychic ability, but look at the shift, right? They're experiencing an overwhelm of emotion and thoughts, and it's very difficult to hold on to who you are, so you get lost in it. It's not the universe testing you. You're transitioning into a new paradigm, which requires a new version of you. So it's not testing, it's that you now have to discover who you are in this new place. Now, if you're not ready for this new position, you go back to your previous one, and hopefully you work on becoming ready. You hope on building a level of spiritual authority. You work on building a stronger frame, so that when the next opportunity to move into that next phase comes, you'll notice the pressure, but it will not deter you from your goals. So don't think of the universe as testing you. It's not that. is that you're moving into a higher level of life and you're experiencing what comes with that level. Now the goal is to maintain yourself and to continue to perform as if you're going to succeed. I believe that I communicated that clearly enough. I hope that makes sense. But anyways, we're moving on to the next thing. Next thing. All right. So Framestar says, what time approximately, Trav? You can give me another 15 minutes or so to get off of here, situate my son. We should be able to go right after that. I'll send you a Zoom link through email. But yeah, generally about 15 minutes from whenever I close this out. All right, everybody. Thank you for your seriousness on the path. Look forward to seeing you next time. If you're interested on one-to-one coaching with me, check the link that will be pinned in the comments when I wrap this up, or check the pinned link on my previous live stream, and we'll have a little interview, about 15-20 minutes, and see what's right for you. All right, everybody, time to go. Time to go. Trinity Medical Ninja says, if you didn't already, could you drop the link for the background mantra? Probably not, but I can tell you what to search for. Durga Shakti mantra. It's the Durga Shakti mantra. You'll see a black background with a white face on the right side. It says Durga Shakti mantra 108 times. Art Quark says, glad I got to catch you live, Trav. Been out a minute, but definitely been keeping on daily mantras. Awesome. That's a huge important part for continuous, keeping the flow alive, basically, keeping yourself in the current. So good on you. Good to see you. Phoenix Wolfette, peace and greetings. Good to see you as well. Love the messages tonight. The Mythros says, oh, nice profile picture. I missed this. Reading and learning together like this. I'm at work, so I can't follow with my tablet, but I'm all ears. Right on. Glad you're here. Okay, so Zero has posted the link. Good to go. Looks like y'all already got that situated. Cool. Hunter the Immortal 88822. Peace and greetings, my friend. Peace and greetings. Welcome back. Atropa, glad that you were able to catch it as well. All right. Honey Brown, peace. Glad you were here as well. Good to see you. All right, time to go. Zero says, thank you always for reminding us of the importance of mantras. Love you, Trav. Blessings and love. Blessings to you all. All right, I'm out for real. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. You're not alone. You've never been alone. You're not disconnected. You're not lost. You're not wandering aimlessly. This is all part of the path. And you know exactly what to do for the next step. You know that. So do it. It's about shifting into that version of yourself that knows what they're doing. Just do that. You're not broken. You didn't waste your life. You're not a disappointment. None of that stuff. Everything is as it should be. And you are moving into that next phase. So have some grace with yourself. Maintain your frame. Be ever vigilant. Exert your influence. Always be leading. I love you. Peace.